idea, $400 million. You can imagine the wealth of ideas in this nation. How many $1 million there are to be made. All we need to do is to really put that little fuse and get them activated. Thank you.
We would like to thank Mr. Anand for sharing his precious views with us. Now I will request Mr. Shantanu Mukherjee to say a few words to us. But before that, I have to make an announcement. As we are running short on time, so all the participants should complete their views within 5 to 8 minutes. It's a request. Thank you. Mr. Shantanu.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
it's okay. First, introduce myself. I work with a company called Qualcomm. Qualcomm is into advanced wireless technologies, and I take care of law, especially intellectual property law in the company for India and South Asia. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me, and thank you very much. Mr. Anand had already covered everything, so nothing more to cover. But that doesn't mean that I will just close my book. I will try to explore areas that Mr. Anand perhaps left for me. Speaking of that, a couple of things. I would rather say what are the challenges that we face now. One, he mentioned that the technology is moving. Again, I had brought slides, but I have to excuse the slides. First of all, as Mr. Anand mentioned, that science and technology is not static, it's moving. It's always moving, it's dynamic. Today what's the state-of-the-art technology, tomorrow it's not. Tomorrow something, it's old. So that means that the protection requirements also change with time. If we say that today protection is restricted to what we defined, I precisely come into intellectual property laws. What was defined in intellectual property laws, say 30, 40 years back, it might not work, or rather in reality, in many times it does not work. Now coming into the area of software, we had not dwelt with that today so far. Earlier we see, if you look into software, we will see that earlier technology was the software, or let's say computer implemented inventions, whatever inventions were there, computer implemented inventions, they were more hardware centric. The hardware actually ran the whole system, and software had a rather secondary role. But slowly what happened, we see that the software took up the lead role and started running the hardware, and the hardware more and more became generic. Now, in this situation, we look at the laws. We look at the intellectual property laws. What are the protection available for taking care of innovations in this field? One way of looking at it is to protect it through copyrights. The other is to protect it with the help of patents. And the third, trade secrets, which often in India gets ignored or gets overlooked rather. So now if we look at the protection through copyrights, we come back to the conventional way of thought of innovation. We see that computer compilations, everything what is worked out, the source code and everything can be represented in a printable form or a written form, and that can be protected through copyrights. But is copyright law actually meant to protect software? That's one question. Now with the copyright protection, if we try to protect in that manner, representations of written form, of any other expressive form, is that the total protection? The new challenges come in now, when the software comes into play in a manner of running the device. we see that it is possible to reverse engineer, and the copyright protection, whatever we have achieved, is meaningless. That means we have to protect in a different manner. What are the other two? As I mentioned, trade secret, and the other is patents. Well, in patents again, there can be a chance of overstepping. We can try and apply for patents for very abstract views, mathematical expressions, mathematical algorithms based what we say business patterns, business methods, or just mathematical calculations. Will that be allowed under the patent law? In generally, patent should it cover? I'm not talking specifically of India now. I'm just generally I'm saying. Then we see that that it's rather overstepping. We should not go into that level, because basically the invention, whatever is done, is not, it's very abstract. Then we come into the area of what, if at all we protect by patent, what should be protected? What should be protected? Then we see that lot of the innovation runs, actually it brings in a technical effect. It brings in really, it brings in a fathomable invention, innovation, which is not just an abstract, it's not just a one-click remedy or a business method or anything of that sort. Whether that can be protected or not. Well, now coming into different jurisdictions, most of the major jurisdictions, with certain reservations, they protect. Coming into the Indian jurisdiction, this had been discussed earlier when we thought of amending the patent law, and I will cite the specific section of the law so that for reference reasons. Section 3K of the Indian Patent Law, Indian Patent Act, as amended in 2005, provides that a mathematical or a business method or a computer program per se, I repeat per se, or algorithms will not be part of the subject matter of the patent. So now, given this, the law of the land, what we usually find is that there are embedded patents, in the sense a patent is granted on a software claim which is actually blended with the hardware. So that is granted. To the extent that, well, the law does not specifically mention whether the technical effect, patents on software claims on technical effect will be granted or not. It says specifically computer software programs per se will not be allowed. So this is, in this situation, we go forward and we see that computer software patents are granted with certain reservations as to looking at whether they have physical effect, whether it's embedded, whether it's embedded with a generic hardware or whether it is embedded to a specific hardware. All those are technical details. I'm not going into it. But now my point is that if we look back and see how it was in most of the jurisdictions, and we compare with the Indian jurisdiction and see whether we can protect software in a traditional way or not, then there is a big question mark. And my point is we have to move ahead and see what is needed for the innovators in India. Whether you talk of Infosys, TCS, and many others, many of them go even ahead and say even business methods should be patented. They have obviously business interest in that. But my point is that this is one very very specific aspect of a challenge which needs to be addressed, and so far it's open to the interpretation of the court, because no case has come to any court on this issue so far. There is one side of the argument brought in by the open source lobby which says that no form of patents on software should be allowed, and the other side, as I mentioned, would prefer patents on software claims with technical effect. So there is a debate going on, and we need to move from a very rigid academic perspective and see what would balance both the sides. I would definitely feel that a mean path where perhaps patents with technical effect should be allowed. That's my personal view. Now, going into, that's one challenge we see, one specific into the area of computers, and I would rather borrow the terminology from Europe, computer implemented inventions, because that encompasses everything. And what happens then? Why? I mean, if you look from a perspective, business perspective, let's move from the academic or value perspective just to the business perspective. If you think of protection, protection is not just looked from the perspective of enforcement. We look at from the perspective of enforcement, the other from the perspective of technology dissemination. That is usually done through technology transfers, technology licensing, where patents form a very crucial part. Before I forget, I should also mention that the other third alternative is the trade secrets, where again, where if you bring in patents, you disclose. You allow the technology innovation to go on, to roll on. But if it is protected through trade secrets, you just keep it in under lock and key, and you do not protect it unless someone manages to crack it. But here again, as far as software is concerned, you would not be able to stop reverse engineering if you protect through trade secrets. That's one part of it. Coming back, that we always try to, or quite often we look at IPR from the enforcement perspective. Obviously, it's a negative right, so we have all reasons to look at from that perspective. But what is more important today is, I can have an IPR and sit down doing nothing. Many laws, like in Indian law, would not allow me to just sit tight and on the patent which I've got. I'm specifically talking about patent. And we have to work it in certain manner. I'm not going into the technical procedural details of that. My point is that if I have a patent right and I do nothing, I get no money. If I want to use it for business, I have to either use it myself or I have to license it. So looking from a technology dissemination perspective, if the right is there, if we know that today, if someone violates my right, I can go to court and get a remedy. Only then I'll come down and say, okay, first I've taken the protection, let us talk and see if, let us negotiate, and let me see how I can give it to you on return. There is no free lunch, so on return of certain benefits, whether money or whatever, it can be other licenses that you have, we cross-license, whatever, and that helps the innovation to roll on. So looking from that perspective, we usually quite often miss. I bring this aspect very much because I come from Qualcomm, and Qualcomm's business model lies on technology licensing. Today, they started in India with the CDMA technology. Now you have 3G. Everything is, you first innovate, then you execute, you make sure that the innovation works, and then you license it, non-exclusive licenses. So you have Qualcomm's partners as all the service providers, telecom service providers, talking of Reliance, Tata, BSNL, MTNL. Now with the 3G you have Bharti Airtel, Vodafone, all the others. So today, if we just restricted ourselves with the patent and sat down and see who is enforcing, who is violating, and then pounce upon them, our business would not have worked. So it's a whole basis of licensing. Looking at that, I would say, with challenges coming up, we need to look into those areas. And finally, before ending, I would ponder on one issue which is making the news very much, not from an IPR perspective, but from a different perspective, that's climate change. The area of green innovation or environment-friendly innovation, we often talk of these two